Welcome to Speak for America. I'm Bill Spadea. Great to have you with us on our brand new show. From major national and international headlines to local stories from New Jersey to California and everywhere in between, we've got you covered, America. A senior CIA official told the Senate Homeland Security Committee that the intelligence community long believed COVID-19 most likely came from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. But top officials buried those assessments and retaliated against analysts who supported the theory. James Urban III said reports were actually rewritten to favor the natural origins narrative, citing pressure linked to Dr. Anthony Fauci's role and funding at the Wuhan Institute.
Intelligence community leaders and senior analysts downplayed the possibility that the COVID pandemic originated as a result of a lab incident. Motives are difficult to define given the scope of the Diggs review. Intentional or not, the IC's actions resulted in a cover-up, wasted resources, and a failure to properly inform policymakers. Dr. Fauci's role in the cover-up was intentional.
The CIA now publicly assesses a lab origin as most likely, but called today's hearing political theater. Senator Rand Paul, for his part, says the American people deserve the full truth. Yes, we really do. COVID unleashed a deadly response from local and federal government officials that killed thousands and ruined businesses, schools, and communities. We have not forgotten. The Trump administration is cracking down hard on healthcare fraud. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announced a 6-month nationwide freeze on new enrollments for Medicare hospice and home health agencies. Vice President J.D. Vance said the move, along with deferring $1.3 billion in Medicaid payments to California, aims at protecting patients and taxpayers from rampant fraud.
Charles, I want to make sure I understand this well. So you're saying that we kicked off 800 fraudulent healthcare providers off of the Medicare system, and not a single one of them called the government and said, hey, you made a mistake?
We've had a handful of calls. We're not sure they're legitimate yet, but it's less than 20 out of 800, and we're auditing them.
Unbelievable. So at least 780 are not even trying to claim that they're not fraudulent. And again, those are businesses that we were giving hundreds of millions, in some cases billions of dollars to.
Billions of dollars. Now, officials say existing providers are not going to be effective. But think about this. For all the bluster from the Democrats about limiting access to health care, the agencies themselves completely silent. So it really does raise the question, where was our money going? We'll stay with this case as it develops and hopefully exposes the obvious fraud happening in many other states. Chinese President Xi Jinping told American CEOs traveling with President Trump that China's door to business will be open even wider. Speaking during meetings in Beijing, Xi welcomed deeper cooperation with U.S. companies, saying both sides have already benefited and promising broader prospects ahead. Among those introduced by President Trump, Elon Musk, Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, and Tim Cook of Apple.
I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever. They can never remember anything like it. I can say in the United States, people aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. Thank you very much.
Well, we are talking about a few other things, but it is certainly an important happening. The executives expressed strong interest in expanding operations in China. The White House said the two sides discussed expanding market access for American businesses, including potential progress on AI and technology cooperation. Important to be mindful as these talks set to wrap up that China is a dangerous regime, which has killed their own citizens and openly persecutes religious minorities. It was Bill Clinton who opened the door to ignoring the human rights crisis in China when he delinked favored nation trading status to human rights. The initial meeting between President Trump and the Chinese communist tyrant took place at the Great Hall of the People, just steps from Tiananmen Square, which, of course, as you know, is the site of a brutal massacre of thousands of protesting students at the hands of the communist government back in 1989. Let's turn to Iran. President Trump said he expects a long discussion on the 75-day Iran war, which has impacted the global economy, but stressed the U.S. does not need China's help to resolve it. Diplomatic efforts remain stalled as the Iranian commander today vowed readiness to confront any new U.S. attack. Now, China is an enormous economic partner for Iran. Do you know they buy more than 80% of Iran's exported oil? So if you're wondering who's really financing the resistance of the Iranian regime and the Revolutionary Guard against American forces and the Iranian people, look no further than Xi Jinping. Now to Taiwan. Chinese President Xi Jinping issued a warning to President Trump. Imagine this, during their summit in Beijing, cautioning that any mishandling of the Taiwan issue could lead to direct conflict and put U.S.-China relations in an extremely dangerous situation. The two leaders met for more than 2 hours at the Great Hall of the People, exchanging some warm words and toasts. Actually, at one point, President Trump called him a friend and a great leader. But Taiwan remains a clear flashpoint between the two leaders and amidst all the pageantry. Now, Xi discussed over the years the likelihood of taking Taiwan back by 2049, which would mark 100 years after the separation from the mainland after the Communist Revolution. President Xi Jinping hosted President Trump at a state dinner in Beijing with chefs carefully blending Chinese tradition and American taste. The menu featured crispy beef ribs, classic Peking roast duck, lobster in tomato soup, slow-cooked salmon, pan-fried pork buns, and tiramisu for dessert. The selections were designed to appeal to the president's well-known preference for steak. No word on whether President Trump went with his go-to, well done with ketchup. Oh, boy. Now to Los Angeles. Los Angeles mayoral candidate and reality star Spencer Pratt. Well, he's facing backlash over a campaign ad that critics call misleading. In the ad, Pratt stands in front of a trailer at his burned-out Palisades home saying, "This is where I live," while contrasting it with his opponent's mansions. But TMZ reports he's been staying at a luxury hotel, Bel Air, for more than a month. Pratt defended the spot, saying his house was destroyed and he has no permanent home. Imagine the legacy media going after this guy with these multi-millionaires running Los Angeles into the ground, and a guy that doesn't need to be running decides to take up this opportunity to help his fellow LA residents.
That is where I live. That's where Karen Bass, Mayor Bass, burned down my house. That is where I will live until I have a new house. The Airstream is a temporary facility. A hotel is a temporary facility. Where my kids are in Santa Barbara right now is a temporary housing. This is where I live. As this is where they burned my house down. So this semantics or the nuance of this is the consequences of their failed leadership.
Perhaps they're going after him because Pratt is absolutely striking a nerve with this video and others, demonstrating the failure of the current administration to effectively fight fires, lower crime, and make parks safe for kids from gangs and drug dealers. Now, Pratt has been going viral with a series of videos, and they're eye-catching, they're AI-generated campaign videos, and they cast him as the city's savior. He even turned to an attack ad from Mayor Karen Bass into a campaign ad for himself.
What does dangerous Spencer Pratt have in mind for Los Angeles?
I make a living giving drug needles to unhoused individuals, and Spencer wants to put me out of the job. Spencer wants to force me to get treatment and turn my life around instead of dying on the streets. What kind of bully forces people to do things?
As a busy mom, running away from the crazy drug addicts in our park is the only exercise I get. Spencer wants to get rid of them. Does he want me to be fat?
A vote for Spencer is a vote for change. Why would you vote for change when everything is fine? Stay the course with Karen Bass. Smile, damn it!
Don't take the bait. Stay the course with Bass.
The latest polls show that Spencer Pratt is shrinking the gap in the very liberal-leaning Los Angeles, with Bass now at 30% and Pratt gaining at 22%. It's now a single-digit race, and very important to keep in mind, a majority of the voters in Los Angeles still undecided. Let's move to Florida. Florida has seen major progress in the fight against opioids. Governor Ron DeSantis announced Wednesday that opioid-related overdose deaths plunged in the first half of 2025, according to the latest Florida Department of Law Enforcement report. Statewide drug overdose deaths down 19%. DeSantis crediting tougher penalties on dealers, wider access to Narcan, and strong law enforcement efforts, calling the numbers a huge success story.
The report shows that statewide drug-related deaths decreased by 19% in the most recent reporting period and opioid-caused deaths dropped by 42%, and fentanyl-caused deaths specifically declined by 46%. That is a huge, huge success story, and everybody that's been involved in that should be awfully proud to see those figures.
Comes as the legislature considers pay raises for officers and corrections personnel. Floridians and Governor Ron DeSantis clearly understand the value of our heroes in blue. Remember alligator Alcatraz? Well, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says the state's controversial immigration detention center, which is now known as Alligator Alcatraz, will soon be closing. DeSantis announced Wednesday that the Everglades facility, opened last summer as a temporary measure, is no longer needed now that the federal government has increased its resources and capacity. So that's good news. The Florida Department of Emergency Management says the roughly 1,400 detainees will be transferred in the coming weeks. The site, built to help with immigration enforcement, is expected to shut down after vendors were notified this week. Now to New Jersey. 2 men have been charged in what authorities call the largest methamphetamine seizure in New Jersey history. Marcos Cesar Acosta of Chicago and Carlos Cordera Gutierrez, a Mexican national, both face conspiracy charges after more than 260 pounds of meth were seized from a truck in Camden on April 28th. Federal officials say the bust, part of the Homeland Security Task Force, has made New Jersey streets at least a little bit safer and sent a strong warning to drug traffickers. The men were detained and could face up to life in prison. Now, I can tell you, as a New Jersey resident, it is unfortunate that federal law enforcement has to work in New Jersey without the cooperation of the state and local law enforcement resources because of the sanctuary state policies of the governor and the Democrat-led legislature. New Jersey Congressman Tom Kean Jr. will miss more votes in Washington this week as he continues to recover from a personal health matter. The Republican lawmaker has been absent for more than 2 months and hasn't cast a vote in all that time. It's been since March 5th. Now, he's missed dozens of roll calls, and now I think the count is up to nearly 80 votes missed. His office says Kean is expected to return to a full schedule soon, but no word on what the ailment is, what's happened, or why he's been on this prolonged absence. Now, of course, this is putting a lot of pressure on the GOP's narrow majority. I want to say this to you, that if this was a Democratic member, the Republicans no doubt would be shouting from the rooftops for that member to come forward or honestly resign. Let me say this, the people of the 7th District of New Jersey deserve an answer immediately, if not sooner, as to where their representative is and why he's not on the job. Now, certainly, I have known Tom Kean for years. I consider him a friend, and we are praying for him if he is ill, for sure. But if you or I walked off the job for a fraction of that time that Congressman Kean has, we'd be fired. I think it's time to hold politicians accountable and to the same standards that the rest of us have to deal with. Turning north, listen to this. A Canadian judge has struck a major blow to Alberta separatists. Yes, that's a real thing, quashing their petition for an independence referendum. I understand they got more than 300,000 signatures. The judge ruled Wednesday that Alberta failed to consult First Nations before allowing signature collection. The judge said any secession vote would impact historic treaties, triggering a legal duty to consult. So, although more than 300,000 signatures were gathered, the effort, at least temporarily, is blocked. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith called the decision anti-democratic and says her government will appeal. This uprising is clearly the result of the overbearing Canadian government willing to turn on their own citizens, arrests, bank account seizures, simply for speaking out and asserting their rights. Interesting side note that the province of Alberta produces 1.5 billion barrels of oil. That's a 2025 number, which represents 90% of Canada's overall production. Oil prices and high production have resulted in the potential of Alberta turning a $9 billion deficit into a $6 billion surplus. How about that? So as a separate nation, they might be stronger and more financially stable than the rest of Canada combined. No wonder why the government's going after them. We'll keep you posted on how the story develops with our friendly neighbors to the north. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says he is seriously considering making oil-rich Venezuela, wait for it, America's 51st state. In a Fox News interview, Trump cited the country's estimated $40 trillion in oil reserves as a major motivation, declaring Venezuela loves Trump. Comments come months after a U.S. military operation captured former dictator Nicolas Maduro in January. Trump says the U.S. is now helping rebuild Venezuela's oil industry with exports already surging. Now, let's see if you're keeping track. Venezuela, Greenland, maybe Alberta. Looks like manifest destiny, maybe making a comeback. Up next on Speak for America, a look at the security challenges revolving around the World Cup, which is coming to New Jersey, plus how the Garden State's new rules are harming freelance workers. Stay with me. Now, let's get a word from one of our great sponsors, my friend Larry Steinhaus. He's got Larry Steinhaus's financial tip of the week, which is real-world money advice you were never taught in school, from investing to passive income to protecting your wealth and making smarter financial moves. Larry, what have you?
Hey, Bill, how are you? I'm excited to see you. And I
Great
got to
see
tell
you, Larry.
I was thinking about what to talk about today. And you know what? Probably the most important thing that people should do is they should set aside some money. You know, it's interesting. A lot of people come to their age 60, 65, whatever, and they want to retire, and they realize they have no money. It's actually said that most people retire with an average net worth of about $200,000, not including their primary residence, which frankly isn't even close to enough. I mean, think about it. What do you know? You're going to live 10 years on $20,000 or 20 years on $10,000? It's just not going to happen. So start putting money away right now. In fact, anything that you could put away, even if it's a 401k plan, or if it's another investment account, or even just simply get into the habit of saving money. Take 10% of all the money you make every week, take your paycheck, take 10% and put it into a separate account. You know, it's funny, I've talked to people, I've trained people to do this, and they go like, I can't even make my bills. How am I going to put 10% away? Well, the funny thing is, after 2 or 3 months of doing it, they realize that 10% gets put away, and they actually start saving. Then you can start saving that money, and you can actually use it for investments. Maybe it's the stock market, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's something else. But at least do something. Try to get the habit of saving, and that will save you in your 60s. I'm Larry Steinhaus. This is Investor Schooling, and you can find out more about me by going to investorschooling.com. And I promise you, we can help you make a better life financially.
New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill unveiled New Jersey Transit's rapid action plan to improve the rider experience 1.5 months after ordering the agency to act. The plan calls for cleaner vehicles and stations, real-time GPS tracking with NJT Live View, a new real-time crime center for safety, and a redesigned mobile app. The governor says no new state money will be used. All improvements will be funded from NJ Transit's existing budget.
My budget, for the first time in decades, fully funds New Jersey Transit. We're bringing 250 new buses and 40 new rail cars into service this year, replacing the entire fleet by 2031. We're modernizing this station, Newark Penn, adding more walkways for commuters to get to the station, more elevators up to the train platforms.
I'm sure it'll be under budget and on time. Now, the new app will also handle ticket sales for next week's FIFA matches. With the eyes of the world turning to the United States for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, New Jersey, front and center, MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford is going to host the tournament final on July 19th, plus a string of high-stakes group stage matches that kick off early as mid-June. So it's coming. It's right around the corner. Millions of fans from around the globe are expected to descend on the Garden State, flooding hotels, transit hubs, and fan zones from the Meadowlands to Rutgers and beyond. But alongside the excitement comes serious security challenges, the threat of terrorism, potential human trafficking spikes tied to large crowds, and new worries over hantavirus amid recent international clusters. Federal, state, and local authorities are pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars for what experts call the Super Bowl of security. Joining us now is law enforcement and intelligence expert Greg Sanfilippo, Vice President of Doyle Security Services, a former NYC police officer and Marine Corps veteran. Great to see you, Greg. Thanks for being with me.
Good afternoon, Bill.
So I say hantavirus tongue in cheek. The really certainly not a threat. The reality is that we worry about When you start talking about the Super Bowl of security, we've heard Homeland Security call this that we are dealing with a dozen Super Bowls. How do you deal with security with an event like this, with people coming from around the country, descending onto a relatively small location in East Rutherford?
Bill, you're talking about dozens of Super Bowls going on within a relatively short period of time. Not only we're familiar seeing with the NFL fans coming from around the country, you have people coming from around the world in the thousands and tens of thousands. So securing these events is a challenge that the United States has never seen. And to your point about hantavirus, right? Well, that is very rare. We saw the outbreak on that cruise ship. Concerns that people traveling from other zones, they may be traveling through as they're traveling, then are they not showing signs of being contagious? Are they showing
and
up at
Greg,
these
for that, I
locations?
mean, do you worry about? I mean, we now know that the government knew where COVID came from. We know that Fauci's Wuhan lab tied to it. I get concerned. I think hantavirus is a ridiculous thing for people to worry about. You're not going to get it unless you're, proximity to rodent feces. I mean, these guys were trapped on a boat and sealed in their cabins. But I worry about the potential of a bioweapon, the potential of, now we know that this was a lab leak with COVID. What does our government do? What is the plan to make sure that someone doesn't release some kind of a bioweapon with all these people gathered?
Your security, whether government or in private sector, looks at those instances, right? Very low probability, but a very high impact. A lot of people would get sick. More likely is, to your point, that misinformation and disinformation causing public panic, right? So just someone putting out something wrong on the wrong social media platforms, or an adversary purposely putting out information to spark public fear. And then think about the tens of thousands of people confined into these fan zones and around the stadiums. It's potential to be a very big mess.
It's a good point, Greg. I mean, look, let's face it, the lockdowns and the hospitalizations, the venting of these patients, the denial of drugs that would have solved the problem, from hydroxychloroquine to ivermectin, killed a lot more people than COVID ever could have. That said, panic in public places is a very real thing. My question is there a difference? You look at New Jersey as a sanctuary state, and you're going to have a lot of folks saying, we don't want to see ICE here. And they're worried that so many people coming in, and how many illegals are going to be here. We already know we have nearly 1 million illegals in the Garden State. How does it impact federal law enforcement trying to keep people safe with the fact that we're a sanctuary state and there isn't a lot of communication in New Jersey between federal and state authorities when it comes to tracking down some of these illegal criminals?
It's a great point, regardless of whether it's state, federal, or local law enforcement, or private sector security, or just the public in general, right? How do you turn being scared? We want you to turn from being scared to be prepared. That's how you lower the fear levels down. Know what's going on, know where you're traveling, have PPE, protective measures on hand. Keep your head on a swivel, as they like to say, right? Situational awareness, know where you're going, and then have a plan. If you get into trouble, do you have numbers who we're going to be calling? So from an individual doing that, also security companies are doing that, and other law enforcement is doing that. If you remember last year, we had a trial run at this with the FIFA Club Cup, much smaller, but we also ran through this.
Let me ask you very quickly, we have about a minute left. Human trafficking, huge concern. Talking with some of the local mayors, one of the warnings that they're putting out, I want to just get your quick take on it, is telling parents to tell their teenage kids, all the kids that are under the drinking age, where they might be going to house parties, to be very aware of the potential of being drugged and snatched. And all of a sudden, your kid goes to a party and you never see them again. This is a very real concern. What is your message to parents, especially in North Jersey, around these events?
It's the same message when we're looking at the threat from social media in general, right? You want to know where this information is coming from. You want to be aware of where what your children are, what sites they're on, who they're communicating with. And, if you see something, say something. It's not just about a suspicious package. It's about suspicious activity online. And there are numbers to call prior to that. Because a lot of times when you see these lone attackers, they do leak what they're intending to do on social media.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. Greg Sanfilippo, thank you. Good to see you.
My pleasure, Bill.
All right, now turning to the Garden State's endless assault on small business and people just trying to make a living. Earlier this week, freelancers and business groups urged the New Jersey Senate Labor Committee to overturn the state's new independent contractor rules set to take effect October 1st. Now, critics, like our friends at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, say the stricter so-called ABC test will destroy flexibility in the gig economy, raise costs, and kill jobs. Freelance writer Kim Kavin warned the vague rules leave her career in limbo, while arts leaders fear nonprofits will hire fewer artists, threatening a sector that generates nearly $700 million in economic activity. Freelance worker account for literally nearly 1.7 million workers in New Jersey, with thousands of small family businesses relying on their workforce. The so-called ABC test rules could literally cost hundreds of thousands of jobs and thousands of business closure. Joining me now, Kim Kavin. Kim, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Hi, Bill. How are you today?
I'm doing great. This whole thing upsets me, concerns me. It's like an endless battle. It's like we're playing whack-a-mole with the rules in New Jersey to try to protect small business and individuals who just want to make a living. Now, you've built a successful career as a freelance writer and editor. Walk us through what a typical week looks like for you and why these rules are going to hurt you directly.
So I have been a freelance writer and editor since 2003. It's 100% of my income. It's how I pay the mortgage. It's how I pay the vet bills. It's how I pay the grocery bills, everything. And what we have seen all across the country in recent years is these attempts to make it illegal to be a freelancer. It started in California. It has been happening at the federal level. I've testified in front of Congress 3 times about this now. And we really were hoping that in New Jersey, cooler heads would prevail. When Governor Murphy's administration proposed this rule a year ago, the public comment process was unbelievable. Usually the state gets maybe a couple dozen or 100 at most public comments about new rulemaking. This comment drew about 9,500 public comments.
No kidding. Wow.
Shockingly, 99% of them were against. We're telling the state to stop what it's doing. It was a massive, massive public outcry. And we really thought the Sherrill administration might just let it die, as it should have died. Instead, they tinkered a little bit with it around the edges here and there, but they didn't fix it good enough, as we all learned in a public hearing on Monday down in Trenton, where once again, we all had to go and testify and say, what you're doing is wrong. Please stop.
Well, you were there, and just so everyone understands, put simply, ABC, there are 3 criteria that you have to meet if you are an independent contractor. And what they're saying they want to do is root out the corruption and the fraud where people are not hiring employees, even though they're treating them like employees. And of course, this is all a money grab. It's all about getting more tax dollars. It's also, if I can be frank about it, about the AFL-CIO. We saw these guys in the back of the room acting like goons and trying to be intimidating and, tough guys with their bravado. The reality is they want to put the gig workers out of work to get more union dues in. But what they're going to do is wreck the economy. Now, for you who are freelancers, gig workers, small business owners, what do you want to say to them, Kim? How can they protect themselves? Let's say these rules are put in place.
I don't know. And that's what I testified on Monday is I probably know more about this than most independent contractors in the country. I've written a U.S. Supreme Court brief about this. I can't tell you whether I would pass this test the way they're going to interpret it and apply it. They said things like, we can consider factors that aren't listed anywhere. in determining whether your business operations are
What does
legal.
that mean?
Think about that. It means they could use a Ouija board and they would still be within the letter of what they just put forward in
I
front
was
of it.
thinking
I
the
mean,
magic 8-ball. Remember that?
yeah,
We
they
were
could
kids? Yeah.
technically do that and they would still be within the letter of this law. They ignored public comments that said the data the Murphy administration used to get us here was mischaracterized. It was bogus. They said, well, that's irrelevant. They ignored, they said they don't have to consider, they're not obligated to consider economic research that says this is already hurting people, especially women in the state of New Jersey. It's already depressing employment. It's already causing
Kim,
problems. They said, we don't want to talk about it. We don't care.
I'm glad you brought that up. It does affect women in a disproportionate way. A lot of women who have kids, and as the kids get older and they decide, okay, I've done my job as a mom, I'm going to get back into the workforce. Not always easy to get into that corporate job or something where you're lined up against all these recent college grads, et cetera. Many women start businesses. They're 1099. They offer services of skill sets that they have. How will this impact that group when it comes to, let's say, daycare providers or home health care providers?
Well, women across the board, there was economic research presented to the state of New Jersey that said the ABC test, just the way we've already been doing this, has had a disproportionate impact on women to the tune of about 7% fewer jobs compared to the men, the W-2 jobs. And that's the same kind of thing they found in California. California did this overly strict independent contractor policy. And the members of the California Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights found the same thing. Women were among those taking the brunt of the hit of this thing. It's just wrong.
And to that point, Kim, California did something about it. The legislature panicked and said, we better change these rules and adjust it because we're losing people, we're losing jobs, they're leaving. So let's hope that cooler heads prevail and the governor realizes just how dangerous this is, because it's not like we're across an ocean. You can move across the river to Pennsylvania, head to Delaware, go anywhere else within driving distance of where you're working and just take up residency and avoid this whole sordid mess. Kim Kavin, thank you very much. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
You got it. Up next, how President Trump's trip to China could impact Iran and the global oil market. President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping toasted the U.S.-China relationship at a state banquet in Beijing. President Trump invited Xi to visit the White House on September 24th after more than 2 hours of talks on Iran, oil, the Strait of Hormuz, fentanyl, and opening Chinese markets. The two leaders agreed Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and the Strait of Hormuz must stay open. But Xi warned President Trump that mishandling Taiwan could lead to clashes and put the entire relationship at risk. Of course, we're still waiting to see if President Trump will address the H-1B1 visa program, which, as we know, takes jobs away from Americans. The 600,000 student visas issued to Chinese nationals, many of whom likely have ties to the communist government. The police stations that operate in the U.S. that China uses to spy on their own citizens. And the more than 400,000 acres of agricultural land, mostly in and around our military bases, owned by Chinese nationals and with ties to the communist government. Now, tensions are spiking in the Strait of Hormuz. Authorities say a ship anchored off the United Arab Emirates was seized and taken toward Iran, while a cargo ship near Oman sank after an attack. Iran asserting control over the vital waterway and its right to seize U.S.-linked tankers. The incidents come as President Trump and China's Xi Jinping agreed the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. Joining me now, Mike Lyons. Tensions in the Strait of Hormuz between the U.S. and Iranian forces continue to throttle in one of the world's most critical oil choke points. Nearly 20% of global oil passes through here. And this fragile ceasefire, as the president has said, is on life support. So this, of course, is raising fears of a broader economic crisis. Now, we have some high-stakes summit going on in Beijing with the Chinese officials, and U.S. officials are pressuring China, Iran's top oil customer. I mean, China literally buys 80% of Iran's oil. Joining us now is retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons, a military analyst and expert on international security with decades of experience in strategic operations. Major, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hey, Bill, great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join us today to talk about this in light of the fact that the president is there in Beijing now. Strait of Hormuz, of course, comes up. And, we've seen the blockades on both sides, the U.S. blockade, the Iran blockade. Let's talk about the immediate risks to global energy and tie it into what you have seen so far with the talks in Beijing. Do you expect China to say, okay, we're the big financial backers of Iran, we actually could pull the plug on that and solve this problem?
Well, I think the focus of the administration right now is clearly in Beijing, and I think Trump is acting very Machiavellian. He brought a bunch of CEOs. He's trying to exert a lot of leverage on Xi. He's flattering him on one side, but letting him know clearly that he'd rather be feared than loved, and he has some leverage on to go. The Chinese have not been successful with their military endeavors this century. Let's put it that way. Their equipment has not worked very well for the Russians in Ukraine. And whatever they supplied to the Iranians from an air defense platform was destroyed probably within the first 48 hours of Operation Epic Fury. And so China doesn't really have this military power to say. It has a navy, it has other things it's trying to project. But it wants something. When we found out during the summit that it wants the U.S. to stay away from Taiwan. So perhaps that's the leverage that it has over the United States when it comes to getting what the U.S. wants, which is for China to tell Iran that no nukes and to keep the straits open. But I'm not really quite sure that the Iranians are going to listen to the Chinese either.
Let me ask you this, Mike. When you look at this from a military standpoint, Taiwan clearly very vulnerable, have been an ally of us for a long, long time. The island history goes back to the government fleeing to the island during the Communist Revolution, 1949. And do you think realistically that the Chinese Communist government is going to make a military move? I mean, they've said this, that by 2049, they want Taiwan to be folded back into the mainland. And is this something that American military might may have to be used?
Well, the Chinese have long-time strategic patience on things like this. I don't know what the military mission looks like. If we're going to defend Taiwan, it means U.S. forces firing into mainland China, taking out air defense systems and missiles that they're firing inside of Taiwan. Taiwan is like a porcupine. Think about it like that. Difficult to take. Very close to China, obviously across that strait there. I'm just not sure. While we have strategic ambiguity, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. I just don't think that the United States would do much more than try to keep the Chinese from invading. But if they decided to go full boat, it would cause potentially World War III. We're not going to risk a West Coast city for that. And we'll take it from there. But in the same token, the Chinese are very passive aggressive. I still don't see them doing anything anyway.
What do you see happening at the end of these talks? I mean, one of the things that I've talked about on a couple of the different shows that I'm on, we talk about how is this a potential distraction away from what's happening in Iran? The president talks about the peace talks and the ceasefire being on life support. Do you see Iran and this conflict escalating? And is there any chance? I mean, we got the midterms around the corner that you're going to see boots on the ground in Iran.
So I do see it escalating. What I mean by that is the military likely starts firing again. I think he's getting pressure from Saudis and UAE and other countries within the Gulf Coast because we can't leave Iran in this wounded state with this capability to rearm and refuel itself. And I don't think that the Trump administration is going to let that happen. I don't think the president is worried about the midterms. Frankly, he says it over and over. I know there's probably pressure internal to the White House trying to get him to think about that. He's very focused on taking out what is the number one foreign policy failure of the United States post-World War II, and that's Iran. They've been at a war with us for the past 47 years. This administration has not done a great job communicating the why as to why we're doing this. But I think he's going to keep going. He's going to keep going at it and look to use more military assets in order to take down the regime.
Real quick, what is the victory from these talks in China? What does President Trump have to walk away with to say, okay, we're going to score that a victory?
Yeah, great point. He went there for trade. He's going to likely try to get something on the trade side, but I think if he doesn't get it there, he'll declare this victory that the Chinese are on his side when it comes to Iran. The fact that they've agreed that Iran can't have nukes and and that no one should charge for the straits. I think that's a major victory already. He'll have to again, not give Taiwan weapons. He's promised them, I think, $11 or $12 billion in the coming months. Maybe that deal will fall through, and that might be the give back for the Chinese coming back and supporting what he's doing in Iran. But the same thing, go back to what's happening there. He'll look for a visual sign of victory inside of Iran itself. Maybe it's Marines on Karg Island. Maybe it's some other thing in order for him to declare, again, victory in that theater as well.
Real quick, rising gas prices. What do you see happening? I mean, we heard President Trump the other day basically dismiss the struggles of the American people with rising costs at every level and saying it didn't factor in. He just wants to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. That doesn't seem to be selling with the American people. Does the president have a PR problem with this multi-front strategy?
Yeah, I think unfortunately he does, and he's not getting any help from those across the aisle from him who don't see the importance of what we're doing strategically. And it's unfortunate, but again, from a military perspective, it's we're taking care of all family business at the end of Godfather 1 right now. The Trump administration has been doing that since they took place.
Yeah.
Venezuela, Iran, Cuba's next. Let's face it, Cuba. Let's hopefully that we don't even have to deploy the Navy there. So I'm all for what's happening. We were going to war with Iran at some point in the history of the United States. In the continuum of our history, that was going to happen. I'm glad we're doing it now when Iran is weak.
Yeah, get it over with, right? All right, retired U.S. Army Major Mike Lyons. Great to see you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Coming up next, how will President Trump impact next week's election in Kentucky? Yes, all eyes on the 4th District in Kentucky. And is this going to be a real test for the upcoming midterm elections? Right now, I'd like to bring in our sponsor, Dr. Adriana Lombardi. She is a skin cancer and cosmetic surgery specialist at the Skin Cancer and Cosmetic Surgery Center of New Jersey. Doc?
Hi, Bill. Thanks so much for having me again. Last week, you had asked me if there were any new exciting devices out there, and I just wanted to showcase one of them today. So this device is a radio frequency device, and it's used for tightening. So it tightens at 2 different wavelengths. One is superficial, and the benefit of that is that it's heating up the epidermis and the dermis for some tightening for fine lines. But also it has a deeper effect. So that deeper effect heats at the level of the SMAS, which is where plastic surgeons do facelifts, and it helps to contract and sculpt at that level. The great thing about this device is that there's no downtime with it. You see immediate results and it doesn't hurt. There's no numbing involved at all. Our patients are loving it and they're getting great results with it. So this device has been over in Korea for years and they've been using it all over the body. Over the winter time, end of 25 and beginning of 26, it came over to us. It's been used for years and years, and we know the results are excellent. Let me show you some before and after photos so you can see for yourself how great this works. To keep up with the newest cutting edge technology, make sure you follow us on Instagram. See you next week.
Welcome back to Speak for America. I am Bill Spadea. Now, it's not often we get good news out of Washington, but listen to this. Senators just voted to stop paying themselves during future government shutdowns. The Senate unanimously passed the measure pushed by Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy, saying lawmakers should feel the same financial pain as the thousands of federal workers who went without pay during last year's record 43-day and then the second 76-day shutdowns. Paychecks will now go into escrow until the government reopens. So I guess we'll call that a small victory for the taxpayers. All right, with Kentucky's high-stakes primary election, all eyes on Kentucky 4, and it's just days away. May 19th is the day. Republicans across the country are watching closely to see if President Trump's influence will reshape the Republican Party in the bluegrass state, from congressional challenges to momentum heading into the November midterms. Two prominent Republican voices join me now. Monika Ploc, who is Committeewoman with the Women's National Republican Club, and New York Republican strategist Manny Alicandro. Monika, Manny, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you.
Good to be here, Bill.
All right, let's dive right into what is a dividing MAGA, huge controversy. Kentucky voters, well, they already started heading to the polls with early voting and mail-in voting, but Tuesday is the day, the 19th. This is a huge test for the Republican Party. Manny, I want to start with you. President Trump really went out on a limb on this one, and we've seen now over the past few days the tide has turned. At first, Tom Massey, the Republican incumbent, was down on these predictive sites. Now he's up, and a lot of experts saying that he could pull off a major upset and keep his seat. What are your thoughts?
No, it's a great question. I think Massey's in trouble, right? I mean, he's definitely trending on Kalshi and Polymarket, trending up. But I have to say, Galbraith has a lot of momentum. This race is really Trump versus Massey, right? Massey has been a thorn in Trump's side for many, many years right now. The problem I have with Massey is Massey's clearly a really smart guy. He went to MIT. I went to MIT. I have a lot of respect for him. But sometimes, maybe most of the time, Massey thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And what that means is essentially is he thinks he knows more than everybody else, and therefore his votes are very inconsistent, right? I don't think ideologically he's a consistent conservative. I don't even know if he knows what that means. He could claim he's a libertarian. I just think he has no discipline and he's erratic. And I think with this tight, the midterm elections coming up, and with the tight, small majority that the Republicans have, Trump cannot depend on Massey. And therefore, that's just a major liability for Trump and the Republican Party. So neither could Trump nor the Speaker of the House depend upon Massey to deliver the votes that are needed with this very small majority.
Monika, that's an interesting point that Manny raises, but you could say the same thing of the United States Senate. We can't count on the majority leader to get anything done. You've got 4 Republicans that consistently vote. That's why they couldn't get the SAVE Act passed. How damaging could this be if Donald Trump does not get his way in this? And what does this say to other Republicans out there? Because clearly Trump has sent a message that he's willing to endorse former never Trumpers in order to get his way.
So it's interesting that you bring this up, Bill. I think personally, this is really a big game of family feud between two Republicans, if you think about it. I mean, it's really a loyalty test to the MAGA movement versus this libertarian, moderate, independent voice thinker. And it's really up to the voters to decide who they want more. I mean, his sharpest defenders, Massey's defenders, will call him, to Manny's point, very principled. Meanwhile, his sharpest critics will call him completely unpredictable. We don't know how he's going to sway, and we don't know whether among the conservative Republican Party, he will strategically move the agenda forward, which is what we need right now. Also, this is one of the most expensive ad campaigns I've ever seen in Kentucky. The most expensive race. It's between $20 to $25 million costing. So it's certainly a very interesting race. But again, it's up to the voters to decide who they ultimately want more. And it's just such a funny family feud seen between the two of them.
Manny, to Monika's point, I mean, north of $20 million, there have been at least $10 million spent against Massey in just the last few weeks. And still, this is too close to call. No one knows. But has this become a major distraction? I could make a case to say that Massey's got a nearly perfect voting record when it comes to the Freedom Caucus and many conservative issues. Is Tom Massey showing that the real problem is with the Republican majority, that they can't get together on lowering the debt, on reducing spending, and they can't get together on doing things that most of us would consider fiscally responsible? Is this just shining a light on the problems in the Republican majority? Because let's face it, Manny, the Republicans vote across the board. Polls are showing that they're likely to lose the majority.
Right. No, it's a great question, right? I think the problem therein lies with the Speaker of the House, right? The Speaker of the House has clearly, like we're talking about over and over again, there's a very tight, small majority, and we know how many, how long and how many ballots were cast to get Johnson to become a Speaker of the House. So he was on fragile ground from the start, and I think unfortunately he's not been able to coalesce the group, the support that he needs, which is extremely problematic for Trump because Trump had a very aggressive and has a very aggressive agenda. He's got a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and he's a Republican. Why have we not gotten things done like the SAVE Act, for example?
Right.
Well, how are we dealing with the filibuster? So if we couldn't get things done in the first 2 years of the Trump administration with the triumvirate of the presidency, the House, and the Senate, what will happen if we have Hakeem Jeffries, God forbid, Hakeem Jeffries, the Speaker of the House, and Thune still the Senate Majority Leader? What will happen then to Trump's initiative? We will be facing 2 years of investigations, subpoenas, letters. I mean, the letters will be flying. The paper will be flying all over the place, right? It will be nothing that will occur. No effective legislation. We'll be just mired in litigation and hearings.
It's a great point, Manny. Monika, let's just talk for a minute about what it means when the President of the United States, I mean, I could make an argument that he is really punching down on this. And I'm not going to bring up his support of Lindsey Graham because it drives me crazy. And I just want to move past it because I'll get all riled up. But let's talk about this, that here you've got the president attacking Tom Massey personally. And certainly Thomas Massey is not the only Republican that has pushed back on some of Trump's initiatives. But what does this say? I mean, you're in New York, I'm in New Jersey. You know, we have to deal with a majority, the largest group of undecided, unaffiliated, independent voters who are completely turned off by the money in politics, turned off by the bullying and the top-down approach, and they just want their voices heard. What does this say for anybody that stands up and just says, hey, I've got a question about what you're doing? Is this a message that the Republican Party is going to operate as an authoritarian group, and that's it? Dissenting voices, not welcome.
Well, Bill, I mean, you said it so well. I mean, to your point, we are seeing a bit of a divide within the Republican Party. It's, we have a strong MAGA base. This we know. It's about convincing moderate voices, independent voices to turn Trump's way, and we will see that in the voting polls. And I think that's what matters most is, yes, is it too authoritarian? Are people tired of this kind of messaging? Are we seeing a divide? These are the questions that, are popping up left and right in the advertisements, in particular in Kentucky. In the AI generated ads, you see this messaging come out. And the marketing behind this race is so important because it does bring up the question of what I brought up earlier, which is, in order to push that agenda forward, we need a fighter and a team player who's on our side that's going to push the agenda forward and not give unpredictable behavior.
Okay, Monika Ploc, Manny Alicandro. Thank you, guys. Great to see you both. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Bill.
right, take care. So we will let you know what happens. I mean, this is a big deal. So all eyes on Kentucky 4. The vote will wrap up on the 19th. That is this coming Tuesday. And we will have all that broken down for you. And make sure you follow me on social media, on X, at Bill Spadea, to get the latest. All right. You can't make this up. This is right out of Central Casting. The mayor of Arcadia, California, has resigned after federal prosecutors charged her with, wait for it, acting as an illegal agent for the Chinese government. Yes, we call that a spy in layman's terms. Eileen Wang is expected to plead guilty to promoting PRC propaganda in the U.S. from 2020 through 2022 at Beijing's direction. The charge carries up to 10 years in prison. Officials call it another example of China's efforts to influence American institutions. Well, you can't make this up either. Staten Island, New York, a literal crush for crime. NYPD and sanitation crews destroyed 200 seized illegal mopeds and scooters. Police say they've taken 5,700 off the streets so far this year. We're only in May. That's up nearly 10% from last year. Commissioner Jessica Tisch calls the unregistered, often crime-linked vehicles a serious public safety threat. Borough President Vito Fossella warns riders, we know who you are. Your ride could be next. Couldn't they sell them? Maybe give them to somebody who needs it? I don't understand the destruction, but there we go. As we say, can't make it up. Okay, I want you to all enjoy a wonderful Memorial Day weekend with friends and family. I will be back the weekend after Memorial Day, but I do appreciate you watching. I enjoy spending time with you and enjoyed today and the conversations. I want to thank all of our guests, and I do look forward to continuing to speak for America. I am Bill Spadea. I'll see you next time.